Some general observations. Where to begin? Studying the DSM-5 and riding public transportation, I receive a lot of opportunities to recognize the symptom presentation and expression that is consistent with many disorders and diagnostic labels. A lot of it is cannabis-induced psychosis because these individuals presenting these psychosis symptoms stink of marijuana, they smoke marijuana, they're proud of it, they brag about it on the bus along with other drugs, methamphetamine and heroin and cocaine, definitely, and who knows what else. So, while this is going on, I am also watching Chicago Med. I am almost done with season 1. And I'm analyzing the writing and the psychological manipulation and the emotional manipulation with my brain exercises, my reading, and my heightened state of cortical activity and the alteration of my brain structure through my education. I don't experience movies and television shows the way that I used to. I'm constantly dissecting and analyzing anything and everything I can. It's difficult for my mind to just relax because I keep detecting the subversive propaganda. And I'm correlating this with real life. So, just one example. Excuse me. I'm catching the bus. There's a young man, maybe he's like 28 or so. And we started talking about cannabis. I can't recall how. I think he displayed a behavior that I detected as cannabis-induced psychosis, mild symptom expression. And in that conversation, I began conducting somewhat of an evaluation and assessment. This is not official. I don't have a license, so this would be unethical. This is just for a personal exercise. And I started talking about how cannabis causes false memories and makes people more susceptible to the implantation of false memories. And so he said that he remembered going to the bank and withdrawing the cash and having the money in his hand and putting it in his pocket, getting home and not finding the money, and looking at his bank account transaction history and realizing he never withdrew the money at all. But he vividly recalls putting his card in the ATM, pulling the cash out, but it never happened in real life. Only happened in his head. But then he also said that he made a big spaghetti mess in his apartment, which he rents with roommates, and he got pissed that nobody was cleaning the spaghetti mess, and he swears it wasn't him, and finally after 3 or 4 days of nobody cleaning the mess, he took a photo of it and posted it in the group chat. Hey, somebody's not cleaning their mess. And they all said it was him that made the mess. So not only is he experiencing false memories, but lost time. And I told him all the other harms of cannabis, but my general assumption is they're addicted. So none of the information you present about the harms will stop them. They have to be bullied, coerced, intervened, physically forced. They're not going to choose cessation voluntarily, nor will they maintain it. This is why it should be illegal. But he expressed a false, hope. Oh yeah, I'm going to quit. You're right, I got to quit. And I knew he wasn't going to quit. I knew he was lying to me, but I was like, yeah, you can do it. I faked it right back. And well, I've seen him the past few days, yesterday as well as today, and he recognizes me and then tries to avoid conversation with me. Like, oh, I don't want to take that guy. I told him I was going to quit weed, and obviously I didn't. Better avoid the truth, like vampire to sunlight. Like all, drug addicts, essentially. In Chicago Med Season 1, there is something very similar where one of the fictional characters portrayed an injury that was easily preventable and treatable if he just gave up this thing that he liked. And so the doctor who did the diagnostic assessments and evaluations told the family, hey, all your son has to do is quit playing hockey because the risk of brain injury and lifelong disability it's genetic, it's hereditary. Clearly the dad has it, blah, blah, blah. And they took the advice and went right back to the hockey. And the doctor said, expressed frustration, essentially, that you could tell these people all the medical advice, you can treat them and fix them, and they'll go right back to it. And I thought, that's kind of what I experienced with this guy. There's a lot of other things on the bus that are really interesting. One is there's this predictor that I had. I've been making predictions for human behavior and constantly being proved accurate. And one is there was black bus riders who were very rude and inconsiderate. One was the methamphetamine user that I met on the bus about a month and a half ago now. He was doing the meth mouth. Couldn't stop moving, the mouth, and clearly, visibly under the influence of methamphetamines. And a month and a half ago, I tried to conduct a mild evaluation and assessment, right? Hey, do you know where you're at? He thought he was in Memphis, Tennessee, even though we're in Virginia. Not even in the right city or the right state. And he's the one I see at this house across from the bus stop in town every once in a while, and that is obviously a drug house. All the signs are there of drug dealing, so I think he bought a bunch of methamphetamine and other drugs with him on the bus to that house, and then that house gets distributed into the town through the Greyhound or the Amtrak or who knows what. And then I see him on the bus the other day, and he smells like weed, and there was a woman who rides the bus every day. She's this old lady, waitress at the Olive Garden, and I always say ladies first, but in Spanish, because she's from Venezuela, so, mujeres primero. And he was like, me, just went right on the bus, and I was like, hey, ain't you gonna let the lady on first? He's like, me, fuck that. Very stereotypical, rude black person who is just incapable of considering other people, right? Just incapable of politeness and manners and respect. Because of the drugs. But there was a second one where a black guy was playing his smartphone loud, didn't bother to get, earbuds or earphones or whatever, and then another black woman did the same thing. There was an old white guy who couldn't handle it, and he had a low tolerance threshold to environmental stressors, the sounds and the smells, or he's always speaking of weed and just being rude, mostly black people, but white people too. And so the white guy had to get off the bus, and I'm like, oh, he's getting old. He's old. That's all it is. He's too much stimulation. Well, I predicted that because I'm in this white liberal area, the white liberals are like this. Instead of saying, oh my goodness, Gabe is right, we need to tell those black people to behave instead. Oh no, now I have to misbehave to show Gabe that white people are shitty too. And sure enough, white guy on the bus vaped right in front of me, tried to sneak in. I said, did you just vape inside the bus, like on the bus? And as the vape was leaving his mouth, he was trying to be real sneaky about it, like, it's like, no. I was like, yeah, you did. He's like, yeah, I did. I somehow had that in my mind, and then it happened, 20 minutes after I was thinking about it, after I was thinking that's exactly what's going to happen, because that has been a consistent pattern out here. See, my efficacy in psychology is really spot on. And there's so much more to talk about, but quite frankly, I'm tired, and I'm really happy spending time in the real world instead of online all the time. Which is weird, because my Twitter account came back on, and the AI job that fired me for counter-programming is now wanting to hire me, but for $30 an hour instead of $17 an hour, but I hate staring at screens. I had gone to a job interview at a behavioral health unit in a hospital, and that was perfect for me. I was looking at people with other conditions, because I'm such an expert in my own. It was really interesting to observe all the material that I've read about, but in real life and gain real life experience. One woman was manic. I'm not going to disclose, any identifiers, but she was excessive levels of energy, excessive, but I don't know her baseline, because they do put that specifier in there. You have to compare it to the baseline, but she was very energetic, kept getting up and walking around in the middle of group therapy. I was shadowing the therapist. And there was other clients, and I was not quite certain what their diagnoses were, because they weren't really presenting. They seemed like normal, ordinary people. There was no stereotypic motor behavior, no echolalia, no psychomotor agitation, none of that stuff. One guy, I think, was catatonic because he was nonverbal the whole time. And he looked like mutism or negativism, but that doesn't mean he was incapable of speaking. It could just mean he was listening and chose not to say anything. And he was, looking down and looking up. Didn't really move very much, but he did move somewhat, so it might have been mild catatonia. And another guy, I questioned him because he sounded like he was there voluntarily, but this was an emergency intake for, 7-day holds, max capacity of 16. And so I treated him just like a normal person, because that seems to be the protocol. You don't want to dehumanize your patients. And I talked about his inner locus of control and outer locus of control, because he just gotten fired from a job, and he expressed struggles with alcoholism, but he states that alcohol was not the latest getting fired from the job and choosing to come to the behavioral health clinic instead of, just getting out and going looking for another job. That I prefer. I prefer that real life, offline, in the real world experience with the mental health, to sitting at a screen all day, even for $30 an hour. I don't want to do it. And they don't really have full tasks anyway, so I'd be lucky to get like 2 hours a week right now. I'd much rather have a real job. I did apply for one job, and that was with community services here, New River Valley Community Services. Just going to disclose that. And a man named Scott Law, who's responsible for hiring people, he interviewed me. He said I did great on the interview, and next was the background check, and told me to get a QHMPT certification. I can't get a quality mental health professional certification because it requires 1,500 hours of recent experience within the last 5 years in any position related to mental health. But you can get a trainee certification. Just pay $25. In his background disclosure form, I'm under the impression you don't have to disclose misdemeanors if they're more than 7 years old. And I have 2 misdemeanors from 2010. So yeah, it's like 16 years ago now. And 2008, so 18 years ago and 16 years ago for, the first and the second misdemeanor, respectively. So I didn't think I'd have an issue, but they did put in a specifier that said, don't bother putting down possession of marijuana. And I emailed him and I said, well, surely as someone with a ton of education and experience in mental health and psychology, you know what cannabis-induced psychosis is. And you've witnessed its harms, you've dealt with its harms. Why would you downplay the harms? And he responded and said, I don't think you meant to send this email to me. You must have sent this to the wrong person. This was supposed to go to somebody else. And I thought, wait, why is he lying? And pretending, or lying to me that wasn't in the background disclosure release that I signed. And so I took a screenshot of the form he sent me and highlighted, red underline, here's where it says, don't bother putting possession of marijuana. And I emailed him with that screenshot saying, well, these are two red flags that tells me your company is very unethical because, number one, you're downplaying the harms of marijuana. Now, I know cannabis legalization causing the mental health crisis is a goldmine for psychology. I know about the stock in antipsychotic medication increasing with cannabis legalization adverse events, mental illnesses, suicide attempts, etc. So is it greed, or are you just ignorant? Are you just stupid and you don't know that marijuana is harmful? He never responded. Now, he has the hiring power. I don't. But these are two red flags. First, that he downplayed the harms, and second, that he lied about it. That tells me that his company is very unethical, which is really bad because they're supposed to be in charge of mental health. So you think they should be ethical and truthful. They're not. So I definitely don't want to work for people like that. People who get ahead in life because they are dishonest, deceitful, manipulative, and destructive, but wear the guise of virtue. Right? He's a liberal, maybe it's this white liberalism. Right? Even though he knows about the harms, he doesn't give a fuck about all the harms his policies cause because, they're profitable. Right? I don't know. I can't diagnose or psychoanalyze him. It's not really worth my time, but I definitely find it curious that I'm willing to not sacrifice my morals, my virtues, my values, the truth for money. Unlike our current political leaders and government, etc. And obviously they've probably been knowing all this time, but specifically with marijuana, it's insane how corrupt and prostituted they are. There is a video on the FBI YouTube channel, and the thumbnail has this guy sticking his tongue is between his lips. And I thought, is this how much of a fucking joke the FBI has become? They're such a mockery of their former selves. And aside from that one, there was another FBI video with this guy whose name was Rajovsky or something, Richovsky. And I thought, that sounds like a Jewish last name. Just right off the bat, that was in the first 30 seconds of the video. And so he talks about how he's the head of the department of the cyber division or something. And so he talks all the propaganda points, all the pro-Israel, very Jewish propaganda points about Iran bad. Iran teamed up with Venezuela to assassinate Iranian dissidents. Just a whole bunch of bullshit, right? The guy was fucking lying to the American public right through his teeth. And I recognize his physiognomy. I think his family, I should say, is Polish Jewish. He's one of the descendants of the Eastern European exodus of the last century, is what I think. I could be wrong. And so he's being very subversive of the American public. And that's insane to me. So if I witness these crimes happening, like marijuana advertising on Twitter, even though it's against the law for marijuana dealers to push weed on social media, they're doing it anyway. The laws don't apply. The FBI is a joke. The military is a joke. The law enforcement is a joke. I talked with the local police department here about doing a ride-along, and the officer I talked to didn't even know that cannabis causes psychosis and mental illness. I didn't know that. So, if Google and Facebook suppress this information, the police just don't know. Like that's how dumb the cops are? What? No way. Huh? Well, that's not what TikTok says. Google would tell me if it was true. Right? That's how easy it is for companies like Google and Facebook, etc., to control and brainwash and, mind control the police and, reshift the police mindset. That's so fucking retarded, because that's law enforcement. That's supposed to be the thin blue line and all that bullshit, right? What? No, it doesn't. That's like saying alcohol causes drunk driving. It's all in your mind. Anyway. So the FBI is such a joke, dude. And then my Twitter account magically came back on, which is weird, because when it got suspended or whatever, it was suggesting FBI Seattle and FBI this and FBI that, and that was one of the last tweets that I made, was tagging the FBI saying, why are you guys allowing these violations of the law, like marijuana pushing on Twitter? Aren't you, the federal government, supposed to do something about that? So I suspected that it's possible the feds are the ones who were behind my getting banned on Twitter. They're the ones controlling Twitter. But obviously there's a lot of corporations and money and, et cetera involved. So when my Twitter account got reactivated, I had 47 followers and 47 following, which I don't think is right. I think that's like Trump is president number 47, so that's whoever it is, CIA, FBI, Jews, Israelis, fucking some Indian with like a red dot on his head in a, cashmere or something. I have no idea who the fuck it is, but that was a pretty hilarious addition. And it's not like there's anyone I can call and say, hey, they're breaking the law, they're doing this, they're doing that, they're bribing, corrupting politicians, including the president. Do something, officers. No way. Donald Trump was sent by Jesus Christ to save pornography from Hitler and the Nazis. That is rather curious that, I've escaped the world of fantasy and delusion of, chronic online. I've been getting out in the real world a lot for over a month now. I think 2 months almost now, maybe. I don't even know. I'm so tired. But getting out in the real world and, applying my mind to overcome the adversity and all that. And so this job, $30 an hour online, which does seem legit. I could probably work tonight, but I really don't want to stare at computer screens. I'm so tired of being a slave to technology and computers. I'd rather work in real life with real people. But that and my Twitter account being reactivated despite being shut down for the zillionth time, it's weird. It was permanently suspended and then somehow it's back on. It's almost like the internet doesn't want to lose me. No, come back, right? It's like these weirdo schizo feds and Jews and bots and cyber stalkers. They do have influence over my life through the technology. Remotely, they can interfere with and influence my life course and actions, but to a much lesser degree, I think, with my choice to be off the smartphone. Now, obviously, they can influence technology around me and in my environment and still spy on me through it, which I learned at Liberty University more than anything. Despite leaving my phone at home, I was still seeing, ad suggestions and things like that were relevant to experiences throughout the day. But anyway, it's definitely odd that they're so creepy and weird that they just... they keep giving me signs that they're watching me, right? One guy in the YouTube comments said, go read a book, and that's curious because that's what I do all day is I read books. So they're watching me, but they're not doing anything to help me. Right? Ooh, aren't you scared? We know where you are. We know what you're doing. No, you fucking assholes. Why don't you fucking help? Oh yeah, and that's another thing. It's funny to watch all the COVID propaganda in Chicago Med with the vaccines and just a bunch of other Jewy fucking shit in the writing. Here's a statistic for you.
Over 50% of bankruptcies are caused because they don't have health insurance. And women doctors, competent women doctors, black women officers, like it's so fucking subversive and Jewy and propagandized. And then there's the technology as well. So my smartphone, the way that I would back up files is I'd hook it up to my laptop with a USB-C and transfer the files onto the laptop, and then from there to a flash drive. And that would clear up memory in my phone. Well, I've been doing that lately, and files are disappearing, but there's files that I never downloaded that somebody else is accessing my phone remotely and putting these files in that I do not recognize. And there's nobody I can call about that either. I called the detectives in Roanoke when my email got hacked, but I think they couldn't figure it out. And one was like this huge folder of gore videos mostly, but medical analysis videos that showed like, the human heart beating with victim of a motorcycle accident with his chest ripped open. Really educational stuff and really good for forensic psychology. It, helps desensitize to trauma and things like that. Yeah. So it's weird now that my phone is doing these weird things that, like even just now, I keep deleting the movies that I can create, because I can take these multiple videos and then, highlight them all at once and say, melt them into one video, create a studio project. But alas, a bunch of previous files that I deleted are showing up. This has been going on for a while, so it's insane that technology is increasing in price, but just becoming shittier.
That was another hilarious observation, was in Chicago Med, all of the propaganda points were there. And I believe one of the Jewish, or I really hate using that word now, because I don't know if it is a Jewish scam per se. Now, to specify, a lot of Jews are doing this scam. There is a synagogue that I've seen recently called Hillel, and they have the gay pride flag in their window, and they put up a sign that said 12 million Jews died in the Holocaust. It wasn't even 6 million, so now they're inflating it to 12 million instead of admitting that. But anyway, and not only that, the scam is that it's like a liberal Reform Jews are totally different than Orthodox traditionalist Jews. But then you see these Orthodox Chabad Jews posting race mixing, where like this skinny little white Jew is married to this huge black woman. She's taller than him and actually wider frame, like more muscular. The weirdness. Well, Moses did it. He had a black wife. Anyway. The propaganda in Chicago Med, the Jewish propaganda, whatever you want to call it, globalist. The globalist tricks and subversion. And it's difficult to ignore so much of these things now that I've self-educated and educated through college, to identify these propaganda markers, these manipulation strategies. And I predicted that cannabis would be in Chicago Med. It's another prediction that turned out to be accurate. And sure enough, they had this doctor who's like the top cardiovascular surgeon in the country. Keep in mind, this is all fictional. It's all make-believe. It's not real. But I had an experience in Ohio where I sold a television monitor to doctor in the medical field, and he said a lot of doctors are pro cannabis legalization and love marijuana, and I thought that is really fucking stupid and dangerous. I don't want some doctor operating on me when he's all doped up on the pot. That explains all these fucking surgery mishaps where the doctors space out their iPhone inside the patient and then it starts ringing. Bro, what? I thought his heart was in his butt, man. And the interesting thing about that is not only does the propaganda within a single Chicago Med episode contradict itself, but it contradicts the propaganda agents on social media. And a lot of them will pretend to be white supremacists, and so they'll say weed is pro-white. And when you see all these crimes caused by marijuana legalization, where a black will murder a white victim, they'll blame the black genetics, but not the marijuana, right? Anything but the marijuana. Obviously, they're lying. The internet's full of liars. But Chicago Med, I'm just going to list most, this isn't even all, but most of the globalist subversion agenda implementation strategies, right? The globalist agenda implementation through media propaganda. So there's a lot of diversity, a lot of blacks and Asians, that's one. Black Lives Matter propaganda, a lot of blacks in traditionally white male positions, a lot of women's, there's feminist propaganda, a lot of black women, so intersectional propaganda in positions that traditionally were white males. Like the hospital administrator in Chicago Med is a black, empowered black woman, don't take no shit. It's so Jewy. And then, you know, they still have white males in there. Oh, and race mixing. An Asian doctor who's dating a black naval superior, which really goes against the tradition. But this is how weird white people are. Jews as well, but more white people than Jews on this. And just to give an example, so Asian martial arts were not feminist and pro-gay traditionally. Like Korean Taekwondo, it was not really that women were supposed to be black belts or teach, or that gays were allowed. No, gays were bullied and kicked out on average, unless they hid it. White man did observe this and said, you know what? I need to steal this from you and turn it feminist and pro-gay and pro-black, right? I'm sure a lot of traditional Korean Taekwondo houses did not welcome white students or black students or brown students. Even Cambodians are like, get out. So the white man said, you know what? I can't allow this. I have to steal your culture and turn it gay and race mixy and feminist. And that's exactly what Whitey did. So you have these weird, like, tranny gays learning Taekwondo so they can molest kids with karate moves. Because, you know, white man does Jude or some retarded bullshit that I'm fed on the internet. Anyway, the other propaganda in Chicago Med, I mean, that covers most of it, but there's also socialist agendas, obviously. Like the aforementioned quote about, you know, mortgage bankruptcies caused by healthcare. Some guy still in a car at gunpoint just to go to prison so he can get healthcare because it's free if you're in prison. Socialist propaganda, feminist propaganda, gay propaganda, Black Lives Matter propaganda, marijuana propaganda, immigration propaganda. They've had a few episode scenes where the police show up to enforce the law and the hospital, you know, intervenes and says, you ain't got no power here. We is the hospital. You know, policeman wait outside. so dumb. And the cops, of course, are black women. And etc. There's just so much race mixing and, superior women dating inferior men in the hierarchy of employment positions and, authority, etc. It's so fucking globalist agenda implementation. Vaccine propaganda. They were jabbing the kids. And I know this is all writing, and so the lines the actors are speaking are programmed into them by the writers. But they had engineers, fictional characters, of course, but depicted as engineers who were very intelligent and anti-vax and did not want their children vaccinated. And then the sick kid had like leukemia type B or something and gave it to the teacher, and so it's going to, super spread throughout the school. This is very much COVID priming, right? It's prepping the goyim for the COVID agenda. So I think this season 1 must have been just before, when did COVID first start? When was it, like 2 weeks to flatten the curve? 2019, 2018, around there. And so obviously COVID was a globalist agenda, and so were the vaccines. And so there's a lot of pro-vaccination propaganda, along with the Black Lives Matter propaganda, the feminist propaganda, the race-mixing propaganda, the socialist propaganda, the feminist propaganda, and the gay acceptance propaganda. And there's also a single moms are attractive propaganda, which is hilarious. And it's just so cheesy. The doctor who goes for the pregnant single mom. He's just constantly violating the ethics laws of the hospital, and he gives this like, I'm here to save lives. There's some bad acting in there, basically. It's over dramatic and retarded and gay. And marijuana propaganda. So these could be, how would the Bible put this? The 7 heads of the beast. The 7 heads of the dragon. And so these white supremacists on the internet will say like, okay, so the 6 heads are bad, but that 1 head is good. The marijuana head. They're totally not connected in any way, shape, or form. Where marijuana is implementing, it's like grease or lubrication for the globalist agenda. It's an assist. It's a smaller part of a larger plan that is implementing foreign immigration, demographic shifting, replacement, gay agendas, race mixing agendas, LGBTQ agendas, feminism, like all these globalist agendas. Marijuana is facilitating a lot of this. And the masses are too dumb and, drug addicted and vulnerable and therefore malleable to resist. They are programmed by technology to the point where what they think is programmed into them, and they don't even realize it through shows like Chicago Med. And so I could see all these markers right in the first episode. In like the first 5 minutes, I think there was a few. And sure enough, I predicted there's going to be cannabis product placement, and I was right. And so it's weird that I'm constantly proven right, and I'm that skilled at neuroscience and psychology that I'm accurately analyzing and predicting and observing these behaviors. And I'm getting punished and not hired and, lied to on the internet. Even lied about on the internet. I don't really know or care. That's outside of my locus of control. But the guy who ran the AI training job that I got fired from recognized that my intelligence made me different than 99.9% of the employees, and so he hired me on a higher paying project. Because I didn't get fired for being stupid or making mistakes. I got fired for being right and accurately identifying that these people were using artificial intelligence to program the masses for pro-cannabis, pro-gay marriage, pro-porn, pro-immigration, etc. And so I countered it. I got fired for counter programming, not for errors and mistakes. Oh yeah, and that was a funny thing when they showed the scene of the top cardiovascular surgeon in the country, fictional character, smoking marijuana. This top doctor in the hospital walked into his office and he was smoking a joint, and the doctor acted like it was nothing, like, the secondhand weed wasn't affecting him, and that it was okay that this doctor was doing drugs in the hospital, and not only doing drugs, but exposing other people to intoxicants, which could impair performance when you're a doctor or a nurse or etc. I remember thinking, wait, shouldn't the, one doctor report him for doing drugs on the job, and not only that, but smoking inside the hospital? And they played it off like it was nothing, so depicting marijuana as totally harmless, man. But then, in another episode later on, a woman comes in with her baby showing signs of a, medical injury from various things, and they point out that secondhand smoke is harmful to babies. And I thought, well, wait a minute, you just had this doctor, forcibly drugging anyone around him with secondhand marijuana smoke, and that was kosher, but now you're saying secondhand smoke is dangerous? The propaganda contradicts itself constantly. Just like the globalist agenda of Black Lives Matter contradicted the globalist agenda of immigration when that black guy stabbed that white immigrant in cannabis-induced psychosis.